Hello, this week's video is being filmed in my room in Paris, where I am here for just a few days to give a talk at a conference tomorrow. Our parsha is tetzavah, and it's also parsha Zachor, and I'm sure that one way or the other in your hearing, your reading and listening about parsha Shavua, you've been told that this is the only parsha, tetzavah is the only parsha in the books of Shemot, Vayikra, and Bamidbar in which Moshe's name is not mentioned. And you've heard, again, that it's connected somehow to the fact that this parsha will always fall in the vicinity of Zion Adar, which is Moshe Rabbeinu's yortzeit, and there's some sort of connection between the fact that Moshe's name is not mentioned and that the parsha is read in the week of his yortzeit. But just what is this connection? The Rav, in his wonderful book that came out posthumously of his insights into the Parsha, has an astounding statement, a statement of, I think, of great audacity to probe the divine mind and tell us about a trajectory in history that might have happened, that would have happened, but that didn't happen. It's hard to think of how someone could make such a statement, but the Rav is worthy of it. The Rav says that that the meaning behind this, it's not just that Moshe, physically left this world in Sheva Badar, but that the parsha in which Moshe is asked, is commanded to make all the garments and preparations for the inauguration of his brother Aaron to be the Kohen Gadol, marks a essential turning point in Moshe Rabbeinu's life and in the destiny of the Jewish people. The Rav has a source which is in Rashi at the beginning of Sefer Shemot, when we have this discussion that we, again, I'm sure you all recall, when HaKadosh Baruch Hu appears to Moshe at the burning bush, and at least the way it's presented in the Torah is sort of trying to convince him to take on the task of leading the Jewish people out of slavery. And Moshe is arguing all the time and refusing and coming up with one excuse after another. He's a stutterer. The Jews won't listen to him. And at a certain point, the Torah tells us that HaKadosh Baruch Hu got angry with Moshe. And Rashi, on that pasuk in the fourth chapter, fourth parak of Sefer Shemot, on V'yicharaf, quotes sources of Chazal, which say that any time the Torah speaks of Charon Af, of divine wrath, there is a roshim, there is an indelible effect on humanity. And the roshim of the Charon Af of Hashem on Moshe, for his consistent refusal and arguing against taking on the leadership of the Jewish people, was, as one can imagine, midah keneged midah. Okay, so the roshim is that you will not be the Kohen Gadol. Aaron will be a spokesman. You say you can't speak. Aaron speaks more elegantly and more clearly than you do, but he will also be the Kohen. You have lost the kahuna, which would have been yours. So far, that's in the Midrash, and that's very nice Midrashic homily on the pasuk. But the Rav says something which I said is audacious. The Rav says that had Moshe Rabbeinu not refused and taken on this task, this assignment willingly, not only would have he been the Kohen Gadol, but the temple that was built, the first temple, would have lasted forever, would never have been destroyed. And the Geula at Mitzrayim, would have been the final Geula, the eschatos, the Geula that after which there is no more troubles and sorrows and so on. I have not found any source of this, and it's hard to imagine how someone can say that they know that this would have been a trajectory that was not fulfilled. But it seems, after all, that this is again something that's sort of inherent or embedded in the Jewish way of looking at things. This idea that we just missed the Gula. We just missed the Gula. HaKadosh Baruch Hu had offered us an opportunity for the real Gula Shlema, and we, our leaders, weren't up to it and turned it down. It's hard to swallow this, but for our generation, actually we saw something like this. In a few months, Israel will be marking the 50th anniversary of the Six-Day War. Jews, good Jews, will be celebrating. You can imagine that our enemies from within and without have other things in mind. But, the Six-Day War, without going into details and acknowledging that there's so much they said about these complex things, was without doubt a Nes Galui, a divine miracle that only a fool, only someone who refuses to see, refuses to hear, refuses to use his head, can deny was a divine miracle. And what's happened? We hemmed and hawed and stuttered, and we're paying for it now. I won't say anything more. You can imagine that I have certain views on the subject, but I think what I'm saying should be clear enough, and I think factual enough, and so with this in mind, looking at what happened in our own lifetimes, I think we can understand maybe what the Rav had in mind, how he did portray, how he did probe the divine mind and come up with this idea of a trajectory that was unfulfilled. But I don't want to leave you on this pessimistic note. It's also Purim, and Purim we celebrate the opposite, where we came just that close to having a major disaster, and the leadership, Mordechai and Esther, were up to it. Mordechai refused to make excuses, to mumble and stutter, to hide behind the usual cliches, and he stood up bravely. And Esther also risked her life to demand a private audience with Achashverosh, which eventually led to the downfall of Haman. Again, here there's a lot more that can be said, but fortunately, our history has these episodes as well, and I think it's something that really should be celebrated. So let me wish you all a Shabbat Shalom and a Freilichen Purim, B'Sorot Tovot, Shol V'Nechamot.